When I was a kid, you often found me walking around with my eyes down on the ground. It was just the natural attitude for me. That was just the way that I walked around. And I got corrected by my parents all the time: stand up straight, look forward, you're going to walk into a wall. But they kind of changed their tune on that day when I found a wadded up $20 bill. And that was just one example of the money that I found when I was a kid, in part because I walked around with my eyes on the ground, always scanning the ground. It was just second nature to me. And that's what this video is about. It's about found money. And if you're new to the channel, my name is White Cross. You can call me White, you can call me Dubsy. I answer to pretty much anything. And if you are new to the channel, love to have you subscribe to the channel. Go ahead and click on that subscription button down below. Click the notification button also. Become part of this community. If you're one of my returning subscribers, you guys know that I appreciate you being with me here again. This is going to be kind of a fun one. Let me know what you think about this one. So the concept is found money. If you are new to the channel, I also begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. That is, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold and found precious metals and rare coins for the last, well, really 40 or 50 years now when it comes to some of this stuff. And I also like to begin the videos with a simple concept or two that we can work back into the subject matter. So we're talking about found money, and the subject that the topic that I wanted to share with you, to discuss with you, is the idea of the conversion play. Conversion. Conversion is similar to the concept of rotation that I've talked about a little bit on this channel. That is, when you take something from your precious metal stack, your collection, whatever it is, and you trade up from something that you like to something that you love. That's that entire process of rotation. It's rotating out of something and picking up something else instead. And that's a way to improve the quality of your collection, the quality of your stack over time. This is something that I've done for easily the last 25 years now, and you've seen some examples of when I've done that a little bit recently too. And I think ultimately it gives you a much more interesting, a richer and exciting stack or collection or whatever it is that you're trying to build. This idea of rotation can be a very powerful tool. So the concept of conversion is somewhat similar to it, except in conversion, you're taking something that you don't really want or need. Often this is something that you found, and you're trading it for something that you definitely do want. So you can see they're kind of related terms, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we get deeper into the idea of found money. I wanted to share with you some examples of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about found money. You coin roll hunters out there, and I know that there are a lot of folks who subscribe to this channel who do coin roll hunting, and that is simply when you go to the bank and exchange $10, $50, $100 in paper currency, or if you're really good at it, in coins, for those rolls, those bank rolls of dimes, quarters, half dollars, and you look through them trying to find, ideally, most of the time, I believe, silver. And I've been doing that myself since I was a little kid, honestly, with very little luck. So I'm jealous of all you guys who pull out full rolls of Franklin half dollars. I've found a few, but never anything really exciting. But that's really kind of what we're talking about here. It's that whole treasure hunt, that idea of finding something. And in the case of you coin roll hunters, you're literally paying face value for something that could be worth 18 times that much or more. And that's a really exciting concept. Found money and treasure hunting, they go hand in hand. I have here a big old jar of coins, and this is probably hundreds of coins. This jar is quite heavy, weighs probably 10 pounds. And these aren't found coin roll hunting. These are actually found in CoinStar return slots. CoinStar is essentially a coin counting machine. And they began to appear in grocery stores in the United States of America something like 20 years ago. And the idea is that you just take your change that you keep on your nightstand in a jar or in a Ziploc bag or wherever it is, in the console of your car, and you dump your change into the hopper of these machines, generically called CoinStar, though there are other brands out there. And they count your change, and some of them issue paper currency, and some of them issue a receipt that you can turn around and actually spend at the store or take to the customer service counter, and they'll pay you currency for it also. Just a nice way to take a whole bunch of change and turn it into something that's a little bit easier to spend. But what a lot of people didn't know back in the day, and some people still don't realize, is that those machines have refund slots or return slots, technically probably really reject slots. These machines, understandably, are tuned quite tight to the tolerances of our circulating coins. So in America, that would be the zinc cent coin. and also probably copper cent coins, the Jefferson nickel, the Clad Roosevelt dime, and the Washington quarter, and even the Kennedy half dollar, and sometimes those golden dollars also. But these machines, while they will accept those pieces, they reject just about anything else. And it can be a hair trigger that kicks some of these pieces out. And what you don't realize when you're dumping in your big jar of change, because it makes a big racket, you might not even hear these coins coming out of the reject slide. And I'll show that reject tray on an example of one of these machines. You don't really hear that. And then you get your little receipt when you're done dumping your coins in, and the machine churns through them, and you walk away. And once you've walked away, that reject slot often has coins in it if you didn't stoop down to pick them up, if you didn't even realize that that was something that's done. So we can make an entire video about that. I think it's an interesting topic that has all sorts of interesting ethical dilemmas to it. But the long and short is that if you are leaving a grocery store, grab your hand in there, and sometimes you'll pull out a big handful of hair or cough drops and some pretty nasty stuff, but you will find coins periodically. And I found some really cool coins, including many silver coins. And I've just got a couple of examples of them here. Of course, I have a 3-ring binder where I keep all of these. I know, I told you I was a dork, right? So this is a silver Roosevelt dime. There's a silver Mercury dime. There's a 1943 Denver steel cent, if you don't know what steel cents are. During 1943, we were engrossed in World War II. So rather than making cent coins out of bronze or copper, which we needed for the war effort, we made them out of steel. And this is an example of one of those. And you can see the date from 2007. This looks like a regular wheat cent, except it's a silvery color. It's a beautiful thing. They made hundreds of millions of them. They're not especially rare, but I mentioned before that I am a metal detectorist. That goes hand in hand with this entire treasure hunting idea, right? And as a treasure hunter, as a metal detectorist, you would not probably find these coins in the wild. My treasure hunting compadres out there, you guys who are subscribers who use metal detectors, will know that most of the time when we're hunting, unless we're doing some serious relic hunting, we are discriminating out iron and steel, right? It's everywhere if you've never detected before. There are so many bits and pieces of iron and steel and nails and screws and pins and everything else that you can think of. In every yard and park and playground that has ever existed, and you'll just dig that stuff nonstop. But most modern detectors have a way to screen it out, and because of that, you would probably never find these steel cents. But also, because they are made out of steel, they begin corroding the moment they hit the ground. And after 60, 70 years, 80 years of being in the ground, there's probably nothing left of them. So the idea of finding a steel cent, quite small. I do know a few people who hunt freshwater lakes who have found them, but that's really few and far between. But you can find these in CoinStar returns, and that's kind of a cool way to find something that you ordinarily would never find in the ground. Kind of a neat thing, right? So CoinStar reject slots, I've got a couple of examples of these CoinStar pieces. These are the typical things that you would find. Here's a Mexican piece, I believe, from the 1970s. There's an English piece. There's a car wash token. There's a Kennedy half dollar with a hole drilled all the way through it. You find the weirdest stuff. I mean, I found golf ball markers. I found a whole lot of Alcoholics Anonymous, Friends of Bill tokens. You find all sorts of things, foreign coins of every stripe that you can possibly imagine. And I've been fortunate enough that I actually turned in some of these. I did that conversion with some £1 coins from the UK. An English pound at the time worth $1.30, $1.50, and I was able to turn in maybe 8 or 10 of them, got some currency, turned it into silver. A little bit of a conversion play there. Been fortunate enough also that a lot of the pieces that I find tend to be euro coins. If you're in the European Union, this is the currency that a lot of countries in the EU spends now. So these are euro-denominated coins, €1, €2, and then the cents that are associated with them, 20 cents, 2 cents, 1 cent, that kind of thing. So I've got friends who travel overseas, and sometimes in these European countries, they have plenty of public restrooms, but often you have to pay to use them. It's not very much, but if you don't have the correct change and you got to go, you're in trouble. So I've given folks that I know that have traveled overseas a handful of coins to take with them, just another way to kind of augment the experience and keep an eye out for your fellow human beings out there who might need a little helping hand. A great way to do that. So we've talked about roll hunting. We've talked about CoinStar rejections. A few years ago, I was at a job site, and this was back in 2012. and site was getting ready to shut down for the day, and there were a few aluminum window casings lying on the ground. And as it happened, I knew that there was a junkyard I'd never scrapped before. That's turning in scrap metal for money. I'd never done it before. I liked the idea, so I grabbed a couple of these aluminum casing windows that were just sitting on the ground, getting ready to be thrown into the dumpster. I took them to the junkyard, which just happened to be, the scrapyard was like half a mile away from the job site, and the junkyard was half a mile away from my coin shop. So just A to B to C, I turned in some of those aluminum window frames. I got $5 for them, whatever it was, and I hightailed it to the coin shop where I picked up a mercury dime and a war nickel. Now we're talking about war nickels. So this was a conversion play. And if you had found these lying on the ground, of course you would have picked them up. And that's kind of how I think of these conversions. If it was worth your time to pick them up, then you've probably had a successful conversion. There's another example here. When I was heading into a grocery store, probably about the same period of time, a $5 bill literally blew across my shoes. Nobody else in the parking lot. I couldn't tell whose it was. Of course, I bent down and picked it up, got my groceries, went straight to the coin shop, bought 2 mercury dimes with that money. Again, something that you didn't necessarily want, something that wasn't yours a few minutes ago, turning into something that you definitely want, something that I've now kept for 12, 13, 14 years, something like that. But I think the most interesting example of a conversion that I did was back in 2005. And at the time, I know you younger stackers who are watching won't believe this, but this was really before the internet became something that we are just used to. There was a proliferation of organizations starting to put out websites to take advantage of the idea of the World Wide Web. And one of those websites was my state comptroller's office. And here in the United States, we have 50 individual states. For my overseas watchers and subscribers, each one of these 50 states has their own government. And there is somebody in charge of all the finances within that state. And sometimes it's called a comptroller, sometimes it's called a treasurer. It kind of depends on where you are. My comptroller's office had just set up a website trying to reunite people with lost money that they might not even know is out there. And they had a pretty big ad campaign. You saw it on buses and things like that. And I thought to myself, I know that I've got no lost money out there, right? I keep a pretty close eye on every single penny that I have. It's not like something is going to go missing. But that's not really the concept. Why would you be missing money? And I give the example of if you ever rented a moving van to go from one location in your town to another, or even to a different city. You might rent this van for a weekend. Let's say it cost you $150. You load all your stuff up. You move from this town and you go to your next town. You move into your house. And then you take this vehicle back to the franchise that's located in your new town and you drop it off. Keys in the drop box, paperwork under the door, and you're out of there. But what if that $150 was really a $100 fee and a $50 deposit? And this happens all the time. If the clerk isn't familiar with it, if you don't hear them say this, if they just kind of slip it in and you're not even paying attention. In this case, the company now has $50 of your money that they have to get rid of somehow. And you've moved to a different town and a different address. They have no idea where you are. So this is something that a lot of municipalities and a lot of states set up many years ago. And it's really a mechanism for these companies to get these dollars off of their books so they don't have to worry about them anymore. They have a legal obligation to return this money to you. But if they can't find you, what are they supposed to do? So the states set up these mechanisms where they can give the money to the state, and then they have satisfied their legal requirement to try to give it to you. And now it's the state's job to try to find you. And of course, the state doesn't have nearly the resources it does to track down every single person who's owed money. So you have to sometimes check with your state's treasurer or comptroller, whatever it's called. And that's what this website was. So what the heck, right? I sat down at the computer, I typed my name into this little form, and would you believe it? There was money out there. I know it's hard to believe, but way back before White Cross is who he is today, he was an insurance salesman. And I had sold a long-term disability policy, and then I had left the organization. I had left the agency. But that was a recurring policy, and the person that I had sold it to kept paying on it for several years after I had left the organization. And the commission on that policy was mine. It wasn't legally the insurance company's, and it wasn't my agency. So the company that had issued the policy turn that commission over to the state comptroller's office. And that's exactly what it was. In this case, it was a lowly $111. But again, White Cross back in the day didn't have quite the resources that I do now. So I was thrilled to see that. I filled out the little online form, and I actually think I had to print this out and mail it through the mail. And about 3 weeks later, I get a check for $111. And that was really exciting. And of course, you know that I am all about the conversion play. So what did I do? I took that money and I bought a gold sovereign. Yes, at this period of time, that's about how much the sovereign costs. That's how much things have changed. And I'll be kicking myself a little bit later in the story. And I'll show the picture of the actual sovereign itself. Yes, of course, I keep really good documentation, including photographic documentation of a lot of my pieces. It's just who I am. So I was thrilled to have the solid gold sovereign that I hadn't paid any money for. At the time, I had a small collection of gold coins, probably 8 or 10, nothing fancy. But about the same period of time, I was home brewing. This would have been, early 2000s, and I was one of those folks who had for several years brewed beer at home. And I know it's hard to believe this now, but at the time, most beer was just a regular American lager. It didn't really have a lot of character. It certainly didn't have very much alcohol. It wasn't that interesting. So a lot of people took to brewing their own beer, and I know there are some subscribers out there who probably did and maybe still do. My hat's off to you. It's a great thing to do. But because I am who I am, I conflated the idea of brewing beer with classic vintage solid silver beer mugs. Beer mugs have been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. They take different forms. Often when they are smaller and they don't have a lid, they're called a can, C-A-N-N. If they have a lid on them, they're called a tankard. And I've shown some of my collection on this channel before. And I found a company in the UK that was selling a piece that I thought was phenomenal. And this was really early in my collecting career for these silver beer cans. I had already found one, but one does not a collection make, right? So you need 2 at least to call yourself a collector. And I wrote to the people, I emailed the folks that had this piece, and I said, I can't afford to buy the can that you're showing, this beer mug that you're showing. But I've got some gold coins I'll trade you. And I thought it was an interesting idea to trade back to the UK where this company was located. And it was an individual who ran his own business. To trade back some sovereigns from the UK in exchange for a British beer mug. And that's exactly what we worked out. He agreed to the terms. Now, it was actually the cost of a Krugerrand and 2 sovereigns. And I'll show the exact pieces that I traded. Yes, I know, I'm a geek. And a few weeks later, I sent these via Express, and a few weeks later I got the beer mug. Now, the interesting thing is that this was not quite enough money. Obviously, the sovereign that I'd gotten from the state, from the comptroller's office, was only a small fraction of this conversion play. But I like the idea of getting this mug, and I would not have been able to afford this mug had I not gotten that found money. So I count it as a win, right? That's a conversion. But the mug was not quite as expensive as the 2 sovereigns and the 1 Krugerrand. So there was $100 left over, maybe a little bit less than that. And we agreed, the seller and me, agreed to make a donation to a British charity that I'm fond of. And he agreed to it. And yes, I've got proof he actually did that. So we also made a donation to this organization in the UK that needs help. And I think, once again, that's a great way to kind of augment this whole story. If this is found money, it's not costing you anything, but it can make a positive impact on somebody else's life. I think that's a good advice to take with you. And this is that beer mug. This is one of my all-time favorite pieces. I've got a much larger collection now, but this is always one that I feel is very special. This is a great, big, beefy, heavyweight, thick silver beer mug. A beautiful scroll handle. It looks like something out of Game of Thrones, doesn't it? And you turn it over, and you'll see there's a group of marks here. What are these marks? Well, those marks are hallmarks, and we've talked about hallmarks before. I'll put a link down below. This is one of the most impressive mugs that I have in terms of size, and it's in terms of weight also. It's a great big piece, but more impressive, I think, is that we know that this piece was made by a silversmith named John Schofield, who worked out of London. And this piece, according to the hallmarks and all the evidence that we have, that is 100% accurate. John Schofield made this piece in 1775. So this piece predates the American Revolutionary War, as do all of the pieces in my collection now. So a great piece, a cornerstone of my collection, I would not have been able to afford had I not gotten that found money. And then about 6 months ago, and forgive me if I'm drawing this on a little bit, I wanted to give you some solid examples because I know there are a lot of people out here who really get excited by this kind of thing. I was walking into one of my local coin shops, scanning the ground like I have since I was a little kid. And this was in the middle of winter. And what I saw on the ground was essentially this. It was like a little piece of wire lying on the ground, but it looked out of place. So I swooped down, picked it up, grabbed it, put it in my pocket, went on to the coin shop, and pretty much forgot about it. When I got home, reached in my pocket and happened to pull it out, and it looked like a silver earring. And you can see now from this orientation that that's a little moving hinge. So yes, of course, this is what we call a bangle earring. And having been a metal detectorist and finding lots of silver jewelry, and also being a jewelry collector for many, many years and a precious metals hound, I knew what to look for to determine whether or not this was a good piece of sterling silver. When I was a detectorist, if I found a ring that was marked silver or sterling, it was a keeper. And if it wasn't marked sterling or something else to that effect, it was really kind of a reject. I'd still keep it, but I wouldn't count it along with my trophies. That's what I call those pieces that are worth collecting, worth saving. And this is, you can see here as we pull up a little bit closer, this is the post of the earring. This is the part that would actually go in your ear. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can just barely make out some scratches there on the surface. And I knew to look at that with my loop. And sure enough, this is what you see when you look at it with your loop. It says 925 IBBIN. And the 925 obviously means sterling. So I'd count this. This is a good piece of sterling silver. And I know that IBB is also a jewelry manufacturing company, kind of a large scale, kind of generic looking pieces. And that's exactly what this is. IN probably means India. So this is a good piece of sterling silver. How much does it weigh? Not very much. 2.2 grams, which today is worth, $1.80 to $2.50, somewhere in there, depending on where the price of silver is while you're watching this. But it adds up. It's still a solid piece of silver. Of course, you would bend down and pick up if you found a $2 bill or two single dollars lying on the ground, right? You'd pick them up. That's that conversion. And this got me thinking, and I have done a conversion where I sent off a bunch of this stuff. I pick these up periodically, and they do add up, just like these pieces from the CoinStar. Over time, you are definitely adding something, right? Maybe one coin here and there isn't much, but when you've got 10 pounds of change, you've got something. These pieces add up, and I have sent them into a refinery and gotten money back, and I've used that money to buy precious metals. I think that's a conversion play. And it got me thinking about the last time that I did that with this big silver mug. And I realized that it had been many years since I had sat down at the computer and entered that comptroller's website, my information, to see if there was anything else out there. So while I was checking this silver earring, I went ahead and opened up the website for my comptrollers. I easily found the location of this lost money area, and I entered my name. Would you believe there's something else out there? In this case, my comptroller generally shows items being either greater than or less than $100. They're not very specific about it. This one said less than $100, but I kind of recognized the name. 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, I'd won some kind of a drawing in a small town that's not too far away from here. I don't get there very often. But because of that, I'd never picked up this prize, and I'd completely forgotten about it. But they had to give that prize to somebody, right? I had won it. They had to get rid of it. They had to get it off their books. This is a small organization that just needed to get rid of it. So they turned it over to my comptroller's office. Sure enough, that was the prize money. It had been there all along. But then I also entered the name of one of my businesses. Yes, I do own a couple of businesses, and they have changed names over the last 20, 25 years. And I decided that I would go ahead and punch in some of those older names just to see if there was anything out there. That's a great piece of advice if you decide to do this. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, some techniques for this. And sure enough, there was actually something out there from 1998. So this predated all of the rest of the things. In fact, this may have actually been there that original time that I had gotten the money that I used to buy the sovereign that I then traded for the silver mug. But it was under a name that my company hadn't used in many years, and I knew this was going to be a little bit more complex. So I went ahead and filled out the forms for both of them, and I sent off, and I got a notification very quickly, I think probably within a week, that first one, that prize, had been, they'd already gone through the paperwork and were issuing the check that day. And sure enough, a couple weeks later, I got that check in the mail. Pretty cool. It was $85.48. But the second one, a little bit more complex. They needed a little bit more paperwork from me. I sent the original application in for this. They sent back something saying they needed a little bit more documentation. So I had to get a little bit more documentation together. And then they also wanted something notarized. And if you don't know what a notary public is here in the United States, it's an official body, an official position that people can have, that instead of having to go to your state courthouse or wherever it is to fill out an official document and sign it where they can see you do it, notary publics will, for a small fee, generally speaking, watch you. They will look at your credentials, your ID or whatever it is, and they will watch you as you sign a document. They also have a little stamp that they put on the form that shows their notary public identification number, all of their information, their name and so forth. And there's a little place where they can sign or initial also. So everybody knows that this is an official document where somebody who has been charged with being able to prove that you are who you say you are has watched you sign this document. They required that I do that too. And if you've never had a notary public actually work on a piece of documentation for you, a lot of public libraries have notaries. It's not something that's required very often anymore. My bank happens to have a couple notaries on staff, and they were willing to do this for no charge. Sometimes you have to pay a couple bucks for it. So I sent off that paperwork. They sent me notification that they had received it and they were churning through it. And then without even letting me know that the paperwork had finally been approved, I got the second check in the mail. And that check, $117.46. So now I'm sitting here with two different checks. You can see them here, with a total of $202.94. And this is kind of a fun thing to do, especially if you have a very limited budget, if you don't have a lot of discretionary income, but you love the things that we talk about on this channel. I think any opportunity to come up with some found money that didn't mean anything to you and now can be converted into something that does mean something to you is exciting. And we're going to talk about that challenge in just a moment. But through the magic of video editing, you're seeing me leave with this cash, and then magic of video editing, you are now seeing me having returned from taking that cash that I got and converting it using that conversion idea into something really neat. Now, you're watching this. Hopefully it has been as seamless as it can be, but in reality, 3 days have passed since I ended that last video. Life always seems to get in the way, right? But in this case, I got to go shopping with a stack of cash, and there is something that is singularly just beautiful about having money that's not allocated to anything else. Hopefully you didn't need that money to put food on the table or put fuel in the tank. And you can, like me, put this money into something that you really, really like. This is the joy of found money and the joy of a conversion play. So yeah, I went to a local dealer and I got some pieces that I think are really cool. Let me know what you think about this. The first one is this really cool 5-ounce class bar from Academy Silver. Now this is a 5-ounce class. It doesn't quite weigh 5 ounces. It's 4.84, I believe, but it is 999 silver. Academy, kind of a known and collected silver bar. I've never had an Academy before. I think I've actually had a couple of the more modern pieces, the extruded or struck pieces, but nothing like this poured bar. This is really kind of cool. It's just a really neat little bar. I have seen some of these that actually have the weight stamped on them, and there are several out there that have a counter mark on them too. I kind of get the feeling that maybe this one's a little bit older than those, but I'm not 100% positive. I think this would probably date to the 1980s. This is a really cool bar, 4.8 ounces of pure silver. That was one of the things that I was able to buy, and I'll make a little bit of room here so you can tick these things off with me. Nice to have a nice chunk of silver next to some gold. So there was a little bit of cash left over, and with that cash, I pawed through a lot of one of my local dealers' inventory, and I came up with an idea that I thought was pretty cool, and that is I've got a partial roll of Barber half dollars that's been sitting there for probably 20 years now, and every once in a while, probably every 2 or 3 years, I come across a Barber in a deal that I chuck into that roll. But because there was enough money and I didn't feel like I needed some average circulated Morgan dollars or Peace dollars, I've got tons of those, I went ahead and looked through their selection of Barber half dollars, and I was able to add several. So there's one, there's two. Now these are average circulated, they're not stunning, but they're still pretty nice pieces. There's 3 and 4. I was able to add this really cool vintage Academy silver bar and 4 Barber half dollars that will now help fill out that orphan tube, partial tube that I've had for so long. and all of it was free. I said earlier in this video that one of the barometers that I used to decide whether or not a conversion was successful was, if you saw this lying on the ground, would you bend down and pick it up? I don't know, you tell me. Would you pick up an Academy 5-ounce silver bar? Would you pick up a Barber $50 or a couple of Barber $50? How about 4 Barber $50? I think this was a really neat, successful conversion. And the nice thing about this is that none of it cost me anything. I mean, I literally a couple of postage stamps and a couple sheets of paper, and that was really all it took to get this. So I said before that there would be a challenge involved at the end of this video, and I'm going to try to challenge you. I want you to do the same thing that you just saw me do. I want you to get some found money, and I want you to add something interesting to your stack. Interesting is in the eye of the beholder. I totally get that. But to me, something a little bit obsolete, something kind of neat, something silver, maybe something gold, it kind of depends. So here's the challenge. Check your state comptroller or your state's treasurer's office, whatever it is, and see if your name is on that list. Now remember, I didn't think that there was going to be anything out there for me the first time. And I certainly didn't think there would be something out there the second time. So you don't really expect this to be out there. And that's kind of the whole point, right? If you knew about it, you would already have this money. And that's the whole point of all of this service that's being provided by the state comptrollers and the state's treasurers. You might not know that it's out there. If you've got a married name, if you've got a name change, check those also. If you've got a deceased parent and you are the executor of that estate, go ahead and give that a shot. If, like me, you've had businesses in the past and maybe those businesses are defunct, or maybe they've changed names, or maybe they're still out there, maybe you're still running this business, go ahead and check under that business name also. I don't want you to be creepy about this, right? I mean, if you've got close friends and family that you have permission to look for, I suppose that's okay. But really, I want this to focus on you. I want this to be part of your journey. And also, don't forget, if you've lived in a different state or even a different country, give that a shot. See if there's something out there. Remember, you don't know it's out there until you look for it. And believe me, I didn't realize there were pieces out there still missing. And I'm really glad that I was able to add some cool stuff to my stack that didn't cost anything. So give it a shot. If you've got that pile of aluminum scrap or copper pipe that's been lying next to your garage getting covered with weeds for the last several seasons, go ahead and grab that, stick it in the back of your car, run it over to the junkyard, give it a shot, see how much they give you for it. If you've got that interesting thing that you've been sitting aside in your closet or in your garage or in your basement that you've been meaning to have at a garage sale, go ahead and dig that out, dust it off, and put it on Craigslist. Let's see if we can get rid of that. This is a great way to recycle. A lot of this involves recycling. I'm a huge fan of recycling, but if it benefits somebody in your community who is looking for this item, and it gets more space cleared from your garage or your closet, and it's putting some money in your pocket that you can put into precious metals, it's hard to find a win-win-win situation like that that can really help everybody involved. That's a great way to do it. Aluminum cans, if it's that car battery that's sitting next to your back door, whatever it is that you can take and try to make a little bit of found money with, and then convert it. That's the whole idea. Be creative, but I want you to be honest. And if you are able to come up with something, this is the challenge. I want you to do this. Go ahead and take that money, buy something cool, take a picture of it, and email me with it. And you'll find my email address on the About the Channel link on the front page of my YouTube channel. Here's a picture of where to look for it. And if I get enough people who do this, and it's probably what I would need is 3 or 4, maybe 5 people who do this, I'll shoot another video and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what you're able to do in order to get this. I'll throw your name out there. I won't give away any specifics, believe me, but at least you'll have your name associated with it. We'll make another video and other people can see what you were able to accomplish with this found money, and maybe take that and do something themselves with their own found money. Remember, it's kind of a community. We're trying to help each other. This is kind of a cool idea. Give it a shot. Let me know what you found. Email me. If you can, email me a picture. We'll do another video if there's enough of a response, and I'll put a video out there. You'll have your name and lights. How about that? And other people can see how clever you were able to be by taking this found money and taking it to a different degree. Let's see what else you can find. So that's it, found money. Some interesting things, I think, that I'm able to add to my stack that didn't cost me a single penny, a couple of postage stamps at best. See if you can do it also. If you've got questions about anything that we've talked about here, the conversion plays from one thing to another to another. I know there's old stories out there of people trading a paperclip and eventually getting a house for it. We don't have to be that specific. We don't have to be that ambitious. But I think there's a lot of interesting things that you can do here if you're creative about it. So let's go ahead and see if we can do that. If you've got questions, leave a question down below. You know, as I like to say, if you've got a question, there's a good chance that somebody else has that question too. Let's see if we can answer that question for everybody. If you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Love to have you be part of this community. Go ahead and click on that notification button also. If you've got ideas for other videos that you'd like to see me make, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I think I've said recently that we do have some videos coming down the pike that were kind of suggested by subscribers, and if we use that idea, I'll definitely give you credit for it. I think that's a great way of kind of giving back also. And as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.